Al Simmons has definitely made a mark in the Image universe by being the titular character of Spawn. But today we are not going to look into Spawn. Today we will look at Anti-Spawn, who is in every way, shape, form, and power different from Spawn, the perfect opponent and the true adversary for our own Lieutenant of Hell. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who are the Redeemers and what sparks their existence? In the Image universe, we have one character who carries the rage and the flames of hell within him. It is Hellspawn, the creatures who belong to the Supreme Master of Hell. The character that we know as Spawn is a Hellspawn himself. These Hellspawns are fueled by the forces of darkness and come from Hell. Now, the whole world is about balance. So, if there are characters who are powered up with the flames of Hell, there must be characters who balance them out, right? That is where the Redeemers come in. Redeemers are characters who are righteous and powered with heavenly matter so that they can smite any forces from Hell and protect heaven and their folks. From time to time, heaven needs a protector, someone to serve God and protect the world and heaven against the forces of evil and hell. That is when the ethereal masters reach out to the orbital angel station to find worthy mortals to give this power to. For those of you who do not know, the Orbital Angel Station is a space station that was repurposed by heaven. This ship acts as a conduit so that the elemental fire, the power from heaven, the flames of light, can be passed into the mortal that has been selected by the ethereal masters. Once a worthy mortal has been turned into a Redeemer, they remember none of their past lives, and they are full of rage. However, the core of their anger is lightness instead of darkness. Even when a Redeemer is stripped of their powers and returned to the mortal realm, they do not remember anything about being the Redeemer again. As these Redeemers are very much in the opposite spectrum of Spawn, they are also known as the Anti-Spawn. Do Redeemers turn into fire? Exploring the transformation mystery. Now, as you know, to be a Hellspawn, the person ends up striking a bargain with Malebolgia, the Supreme Master of Hell. They end up infused with necroplasm and become a lieutenant for the Hell's army. However, when it comes to being the Redeemer, things are not quite like that. Well, what happens is, whenever the ethereal masters decide that God could use a loyal servant fighting his battles and whatnot, the masters reach out to the Star Hive. The Star Hive, better known as the Orbital Angel Station, is a human space station that is now being used by heaven. Like we just discussed, using this space station, the ethereal masters look for a worthy and honest human being. Once they locate the guy, they take the human up to the Star Hive and fill them with the elemental fire. This elemental fire is an energy that is directly from heaven, the flames of light, if you want to explain it that way. This elemental fire gets poured into the mortal, and once they are full of it, they become the Redeemer. This fire burns the mortal from the inside, so the process of becoming the Redeemer is extremely painful. We learn early on that if one thinks that the Redeemer is weak, the Redeemer can always be made stronger by putting them through grueling pain and adding more elemental fire in them, as we see in an issue of 18 of Spawn. Can he transform his elemental fire into any weapon? When it comes to the Redeemers, their main source of power is the elemental fire. The elemental fire is a heavenly power that is bestowed on the Redeemer, which makes them a significantly dangerous adversary to Spawn. Now, this divine empowerment comes with a lot of perks for the Redeemer, and it gives them strength, agility, and durability that they did not have before. Their reflexes are far greater than what they used to have while they were mortals. This fire fills them with the rage that helps the Redeemers go against Spawn. And in order to go against the Spawn, the Redeemers end up with the ability of energy manipulation. They use the elemental fire in their body and project it out as energy blasts. Not only that, they can also manipulate it into a makeshift blade and use it to cut and stab. So, the biggest weapon for a Redeemer is his elemental fire. Can Redeemers recall their past lives after transformation? Now, while the mortal selected is meant to be worthy and righteous, they also need him to be pure. A clean slate would be better because the elemental fire is like a ball of rage that burns inside of him, and the only way that pain and rage would go away is by defeating Spawn. That is why when a mortal is chosen to be a Redeemer, his entire memory is wiped clean. This gives the ethereal masters a clean slate who would be focused on one goal, which is to hunt down and defeat the Hell Spawn. This leads to the Redeemer forgetting everything about their past life and only focusing on hunting the Hell Spawn. And if the Redeemer fails or is shown to be impure and unable to handle the pure power of the elemental fire, he is stripped of his power and sent back into the mortal realm, where he lives out the rest of his days unaware of his Redeemer days. However, when there is a rule, there is an expectation for it. In the Image universe, there have been 3 Redeemers overall. They are Jason Wynn, Phil Timper, and Eddie Frank. When it came to Eddie Frank, the 3rd Redeemer, he remembered his past life. That was a special case. Do Redeemers have teleportation ability? The whole Spawn versus Redeemers fight is a very divine fight. There are a lot of divine powers involved when it comes to their fights. You have Spawn, who represents Hell and Malebolgia, the supreme master of Hell, and on the other hand, you have Redeemer, who replaces God and his divine powers. So because of the nature of the fight, there have to be some special tricks that the Redeemer needs to have up his sleeve in order to have the upper hand whenever he faces off against his enemy, Spawn. One such upper hand-esque power is the teleportation ability. Once imbibed with the eternal flame, the Redeemer is able to teleport to wherever the Hellspawn is so that he can hunt the Hellspawn and eventually kill it. This ability truly makes the Redeemer quite the scary opponent to have because you will never know where this divine enemy of yours would come from. As we see in the Spawn series, whenever Spawn is stuck somewhere where things are specifically at high stakes and a lot is at risk, the Redeemer shows up. As we know, Spawn is able to use magic and has the power of flight, favoring him. That would be an issue for the Redeemer had the Redeemer not had teleportation powers. Thanks to these powers, whenever Spawn is out of reach, no matter how out of reach he gets, the Redeemer always shows up to kill Spawn. This scary determination and rage that the Redeemer feels towards Spawn is what makes him even scarier as an adversary, even for someone as strong as Spawn. They can sense the Hell Spawn from anywhere. The Eternal Fire is a divine power that fills up the mortal of choice when the ethereal masters choose them. Now this power transforms them into someone that they are not, someone new, someone we know as the Redeemer. This transformation definitely comes with a lot of perks. For one, the Redeemer does not have to worry about carrying a single weapon because his whole body is a weapon thanks to that elemental fire of his. All he has to do is focus on the energy and use it as a blast to protect himself, and he can do various types of energy blasts based on whatever the situation needs. He could even use it as a blade if he needed to. Plus, he also gets the power of teleportation, which is understandably very cool. However, there is one trait that makes this transformation extremely cool. Now, before we talk about it, let us reel back a little. Why was Redeemer necessary in the first place? That was because the world is all about balance, and when there is Hellspawn running free on the streets, there has to be someone who is out there willing to defeat him. The sole purpose of being a Redeemer is to be God's loyal and pure servant who would specifically go out and hunt Spawn. This is why every power that the Redeemer has is built on that purpose. His superhuman strength, durability, agility, and his ability to teleport with his energy manipulation are all for the sake of defeating Spawn. But how can the Redeemer figure out where the Spawn is, as Spawn himself is magical enough and is able to slip away in the darkness? For that specific reason, the Redeemers have superhuman tracking abilities. They are always able to sense wherever Spawn is. This tracking ability, paired with their teleportation ability, is what makes them show up at different places where Spawn would not be expecting them at all. Is Anti-Spawn more powerful than Spawn? In the 18th issue of Spawn, we see the first ever time Spawn and Anti-Spawn face off against one another. This fight is definitely unexpected, which is why when the first few hits are being exchanged, the Redeemer has the upper hand. He uses his energy blast, and he burns the insides of Spawn completely. However, this only lasts momentarily because, soon enough, someone shows up who was not expected to be there at all. Dipper, one of the seemingly downtrodden people that Spawn is kind to, decides to stand up against Redeemer. He arms himself with an iron rod and bravely tries to bash the Redeemer across his face. This gives enough of a surprise to the Redeemer. The Redeemer gets distracted and faces the group of people that Dipper brought himself with. This gave Spawn enough time to recover from the energy blast that was burning him from the inside. This led to him being able to gather up all his strength and hit the Redeemer with his necroplasm, effectively gaining the upper hand in the fight. As the fight progressed, Spawn had the Redeemer on the floor, unable to stand up as Spawn repeatedly hit him. When the result of the fight became obvious, the Redeemer randomly disappeared. This surprised Spawn completely, but he did not worry about it much. But we did get to see the fate of the Redeemer, who was defeated by Spawn. Redeemer was actually taken back into Starhive, the human spaceship that is being used by Heaven. There we see the Ethereal Masters at play. They pump the Redeemer more and more full of elemental fire, even when the Redeemer himself begs to be let go as he is burning from the inside. The Ethereal Masters refuse. In their words, this run-in was nothing more than just a trial run. So in conclusion, the anti-Spawn has the capabilities of being stronger than the Spawn. However, in the first fight between these two, Spawn was the winner. How many individuals have become Redeemers? Over the years, there have been 3 Redeemers. The first of it being Jason Wynn. Jason Wynn is the director of the United States Security Corps. He had a very powerful position because the USSC covered the Central Intelligence Agency, National Security Agency, and National Security Council in the power strata. He was a very powerful man, and he was the one in charge of Al Simmons. He sent Al Simmons on various missions, and when Al started to question him, he decided to get rid of him. He made Al's partner Chappelle burn Al alive. Al's soul was used as a bartering clip by Wynn because he wanted the very essence of hell, known as the necroplasm. He offered Malebolgia the soul of Al Simmons and, in exchange, got the necroplasm, which put Simmons' memories and came to be known as Simmonsville, a small piece of hell on Earth that was a huge part of a project run by the US government. However, Wynn was chosen to be the test Redeemer in the comics, and much to nobody's surprise, he was not pure enough to carry out the full potential of the Redeemer. As he was found to be impure, he was sent back to Earth, with his eternal flame powers stripped away from him and his memory wiped. Since then, he has been seen working with the Clown, the henchman of Malebolgia, to figure out how to kill Al Simmons again, who we know as Spawn. The second Redeemer that we know of is a man known as Phil Timper. He had been in and out of prison all of his life, and he did not have everything sorted out for him. However, he was of faith, and he was very diligent about it for the past 11 years. This led to him being chosen. As Phil was significantly purer than Wynn, he ended up with more elemental fire in him than Wynn. This led to him being a stronger Redeemer than the previous one. However, his run-in with Spawn would be his last one ever because as they fought, Spawn ripped his arm off. This led to the eternal fire in Phil spilling out of him, setting the building they were in on fire. The building exploded from a necroplasm bomb, and Spawn was able to escape with his friend Bobby, whom Phil had tracked down on order just in time. The last Redeemer that we have had is Eddie Frank. He was a young boy who often had to watch his father be abusive towards his younger brother. At one point, he ended up killing his father just to protect his brother from the abuse. This pushed the two brothers to travel to New York City, where Eddie started working for Snake the Dealer, even though he knew that this was illegal activity. However, when there was an emotional outburst from Spawn, Eddie ended up killing the Snake. This led to Eddie feeling like every problem in their life was caused by Spawn. This led to him choosing to be a mass shooter and take his life. But he was reborn as the third Redeemer, and he battled with Spawn, defeating him this time. However, Eddie realized that the misery in his life was not because of Spawn, but because of his father, which led to the Redeemer getting the Box of Eden, the relic that promised Al a future with his wife Wanda, and giving the relic to Spawn. However, the Box of Eden was a trick that Cogliostro used to get control of Hell, and he vanquished both Spawn and the Redeemer. Does the Redeemer have any weaknesses? While the Redeemer may be indomitable in a lot of ways, he does have a weakness. That is his state of being. The Redeemer as a state of being does not have any permanency. He is only formed when the elemental fire is given to someone who is worthy of it, if at all, and if they inherit the title of the Redeemer. Once the vessel passes on or proves itself to be unworthy, the elemental fire is taken from them, and the Redeemer ceases to exist until a new vessel is taken up. This disembodied presence of the Redeemer is the biggest weakness that this character has. Marvelous verdict. For a force of good, the Redeemer is quite terrifying. There is something awful brutal about the way the next Redeemer is made, and while the powers themselves are terrifying, the concept of not knowing anything other than a burning rage in your chest that prevents you from thinking in any other way is definitely scary. The Redeemer is not someone that Spawn can ever take lightly, and we are curious to see if there will be a return of this true force of good in the Spawn universe anytime soon. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.